Howdy y'all, and welcome to the first video in the series of how I built the Empire State Building rig. So the client wanted a reimagining of the Empire State Building. So the first thing I did was went online and got the actual measurements of the building to base my project off of. After writing down all the measurements, I converted them into percentages, and this is how I was able to get this very rough draft. So one of the client's biggest requests is that the tallest middle section of the Empire State Building had a coil in it. So this coil, made by Tim Dreyer, I based the entire building around. So here are the measurements for the interior components. So the can itself is going to be 3 inches tall by 2.5 inches in diameter. We're going to have our coil at 4.25 inches tall and 1.5 inches in diameter. And we're going to have the top mouthpiece as 1.5 inches tall and 1.5 inches in diameter. The top spire is going to be 3 inches tall. So in total, it's about 12 inches, give or take a little bit. Each section of the exterior components are going to differ in size depending on the connection points between the individual pieces on the interior piece. So all in all, it should be around 12 inches, give or take. It's not a complete accurate estimate. It's just what I'm basing all my measurements off of, and hopefully it turns out okay. So yeah, that is how I got my measurements. So the first portion of the pipe that we're going to be building is going to be the can base. Now, would it be smarter to just order in the tube in the size and the wall weight that you need? Sure. Did I have that on hand? No. Did I include it in the budget? I did not, because I knew that I already had tubing that I could just blow out. So what I've done here is I've heated the open end of the tube. I've tacked it to the end of my puntee. I'm turning away with my puntee hand and towards myself with my tube hand. Opposite directions are now creating a point on the end of my tube, a termination that I can use to heat up the end, poke my puntee into the interior of the tube, pull out, go into the flame, slightly turn and pull away, and rip open a hole that I can then ream open and use as a connection point to a handle, so that I have a handle on each side of the tube so that I can cut it in half, so that I can use one half of the tube for my project and save the other half for a project in the future. Heating up equally the opening of the tube and the flared handle, pressing them together in the flame, letting them sit for a second in the heat, then pulling it out of the flame, a slight pull, not much, just even out the wall weight, and then turn it in your hands to let the shoulder set and to keep it on center. Now I'm grabbing my V-cutting blade and setting it in front of me. I'm going to be using this to do a constriction on the center of this tube, and then eventually use the heat difference between a hot and a cold spot to pop it in half. I'm going in with my first initial heat sink. What I'm doing is I'm taking that heat from the exterior of the wall and letting it sink to the interior of the wall. This is really important and crucial so it doesn't get all wibbly wobbly on you. So I'm going in with my second heat, just getting a little heat in there, taking it out, looking at it with my eyes, seeing that it's moving. Now I'm going to go in and I'm not even going to press. I'm just going to lightly roll it in that V. I want it to go all the way around nice and smooth. I want to make my initial crease. I'm not pressing. I'm just allowing that crease to naturally form by the weight of the tube in my hands. On this second reheat, I'm actually going to be putting a deep groove mark when I go back into the V, and that deep groove mark is going to allow me to have a nice heavy shoulder that can hold on to heat and a thinner connection point where I'll be using a difference in heat to literally snap the tube in half. The shoulders will stay hot. The connection point will be colder, so that connection point will be nice and rigid. It's going to set up. Those shoulders will be a little bit more flexible. So I'm blowing on the glass, heating one side up, blowing on the glass, and then popping it in half. After creating our blank piece of tubing, what we're going to do is go in and we're going to seal off the previous cold pop from the V-blade. We want to make it nice and round. We want the wall weight to be very even and symmetrical, because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be condensing down and blowing out this tubing into a can. I'm just dusting off any of the extra kiln dust with a piece of cardboard. And here what you're going to see is me handling up to the end of my blank, and I'm just going to be condensing down the wall weight and blowing it out. So we're taking the length we're condensing it down and they're blowing it out into a wider width. So that's all that we're doing here. We're shrinking the length and creating a wider width. And so this is sped up quite a bit, but all I'm doing is heating, condensing, blowing out, heating, condensing, and blowing out again. I'm bringing it back into the marver and I'm setting the exterior wall the size that I want the entire can shape to be. And here I'm just kind of maneuvering the glass, getting it nice and happy, making sure it's nice and cohesive so that when I bring it back into the marver, it blows out into a nice, pretty, even wall. Here I'm checking, just making sure for any visual imperfections. The wall weight's a little thick. I bring it back out into the marver. I blow it out. I just make sure everything looks nice and cohesive. So as you can see here, I have a cone shape and the wall weight is uneven. To fix that, I'm simply going to heat it and blow it. And I'm pulling it back into the marver just to allow that wall to set and for that molten glass to move down and away from where it originally was to a place that I want it to be. So now what I'm interested in doing is making nice, crispy right angles on the top and the bottom of my can. And I'm gonna do that by very gradually heating, blowing out, and slightly condensing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna heat up this rounded shoulder. I'll bring it back into my marver. I'll blow it out very slightly, allow that glass to move up, out, and away. And I'll have to do that a few times. This is a gradual process so that the wall weight looks nice and even. I don't want to move too much too quickly or too little too slowly. So what I'm about to do is heat up the front side, and I want to bring it onto the exterior of my L marver, but I realize that the flame is not the correct heat, so I change it. I heat it up very slowly. I bring it out to the outside of the L marver, do a light press, very slowly, very gradually, adding air, making sure that 90-degree angle is nice and cohesive, and the wall weight from the top of the right angle to the bottom of the right angle to the actual angle itself. I don't want anything to get too thick or too thin. I want to make sure the can is nice and even, and I personally do that by gradual heat ups, blowouts, and condensing. Every time I do a blowout, I'm just going back into the L marver and I'm checking my work. I'm making sure that the rest of the can is the exact same diameter. The can is not the exact same diameter, so what I'm doing is I'm going in, I'm giving a nice little heat, I'm bringing it back into the L marver, and I'm making it the exact same size from shoulder to shoulder. Now that the top of the can is done, I'm taking off my punty. I'm going to remove the excess glass, and then I'm going to heat up the bottom, grab my graphite paddle, and I'm going to heat the butt. I'm going to bring it into the L marver, and I'm going to give it a nice little flat tushy. The next thing we're going to do is decide where on the wall of the can we're going to pop a hole to drop the stem into. So with my hand torch, I'll be going clockwise a few times and then counterclockwise while blowing and allowing the glass to come up like a little mountain and peak, and then let the glass fall down and around and then blow out again until I get a nice little symmetrical popped hole. Now I'm taking a punty and I'm making a nice little flat puck on the end because I'm going to heat up that hole. I'm going to do a push and a pull. I'm going to remove any excess glass so that the hole itself, the connection point, is nice and thin to receive the downstem I'm going to be placing inside of it.